This is the Storypunks podcast, the show where we talk about all the punks, so steampunk, dieselpunk, cyberpunk, and all the other punks. Today we're talking about proto-cyberpunk, meaning just before cyberpunk really kicked off. I tried to choose mostly works for our salon that were truly foundational to each genre, but this was one of those where I felt like it was really important to touch on it and to involve it. Now, cyberpunk actually kicked off after this book was published, but it really is influential in my opinion, and we talk all about that, and it's up to everyone's interpretation. But I'm really thrilled to be speaking with Madqueen. So I introduced Madqueen in the last episode. I've been so impressed with her videos over on YouTube, and she does such a great job at directing her videos and also starring in them and editing them. I'm so excited to share her insights on the book version of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? So that's the book by Philip K. Dick that we're discussing today, and it will be in two parts. In the second part, it will be a true continuation. So a lot of times in my two-parters, we have a theme that the discussion really focuses on, and this one flowed through so many things that I'll just call it a true two-parter, and we meander through all sorts of wonderful topics. So hopefully it gives you a lot to think about. As I read this book, it was the second time I'd interacted with it. The first time was it was for an assignment and I didn't really connect with it. But the second time I was way more involved, and it was a whole different experience. And I will be totally honest, I left reading this book feeling like my ideas were a little unformed about it. And I think that's still okay. So this captured where I was at, and I ask a lot of questions, to be honest, because I have a true expert on the show with me in Madqueen. So I hope you glean a lot, or at least think through some questions or possibilities that you may have had as you checked out this book. And I do recommend checking it out through audiobook. So I've mentioned this several times, I'll be really brief, but you can find Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep on Audible, and it was a really great recording. I just thoroughly enjoyed it, And if you're looking for a running list of possibilities for your own audiobook listening, go to storypunks.world/Audible. And Audible is sponsoring these episodes of the Storypunks podcast. Other than that, I'll just jump to a personal update. So I actually have something this week, and I have something kind of big. So it's big as far as my life and by extension, my writing. So I've been working on fiction and updating you here and there saying, I'm working, nothing really to report, as we do. That's how the creative process goes. But I have had something pop up, something that I've been looking forward to doing at some point in my life, and things have kind of come together to move me in that direction unexpectedly as these things happen. So what it is I've always been interested in trying to live off-grid. Now, that sounds kind of funny because I produce a podcast, and that's very much an online activity. But I think this can be done. I think that I can create a lifestyle where I come into town and work on my podcast. It's going to mean changing things a little bit. So you'll probably see some changes in the upcoming weeks, but the core ideas will hopefully stay the same as far as this show will be published every week, and I will be doing a seasonal show and all that good stuff. I have to play a little bit with this whole live session thing that we've been doing for these book clubs. And it may mean moving away from Facebook possibly to some of the other platforms that are just a little easier to work with, to be honest, and where I can really depend on the feed, and probably taking it out of a group situation, because I think that's been a hindrance to some people joining. So it's all just in motion, and I'm still working it all out. But as far as the actual desire to live off grid, this is just something I've been interested in having as an option. And I figure you can always go back on grid, but it's kind of nice to know that you have a place that's off grid that you can either just escape to temporarily to go write something, or that you can truly, live in that situation and reap the benefits of that. So I am someone who's super interested in tiny houses. And so I've been checking out land and I've been just looking for different opportunities, and that has kind of put some stuff in motion. So as I look to that major life change, it's just got me thinking, of course, about how I'm going to continue with this or that. But there's so many advantages, and I'm really looking forward to hopefully capturing more time toward finishing some of the creative projects that I've had in limbo. There's others that I'm waiting on for reasons that aren't really in my control at this point. But there's other ones that I could be chipping away at, and I would love to get momentum on those and just really get things rolling. Do you relate? It's all about, creating these lifestyle changes or these parameters that allow us to have the energy and the time coincide to the same time frames so that you can actually get your work done and not just constantly be, spinning out or sputtering out or whatever. So I will be resurrecting my blog, theproductiveauthor.com, in some form as I go through this metamorphosis. But I definitely wanted to mention that here as my update because it is a time of tons of decisions for me, and they'll be happening pretty rapid fire here. So really exciting, but also truly probably going to cause some disconnects and upheavals. So I'm really working hard to get things done ahead of time, and hopefully you won't see hiccups over here on the show. But if anything does happen, I hope you'll just kind of have that framework for what's going on over here. And as ever, you can find my work at cindygrigg.com. So you can always see how things are going no matter when you're listening to this. Go to cindygrigg.com, CINDYGRIGG.com. Other than that, is if you're interested in the next read, it will be Adam Christopher's Empire State, which is a diesel punk read. However, I do not have a scheduled date for that because of some of these shifting things. I am not going to do the every other week schedule that I originally laid out. It was ambitious, and I knew that, but I also figured people would want to, really keep that pace. I definitely didn't want people to just be like, when's the next one coming out? So instead, I think I erred on the other side, and I think it's been pretty hard for people to keep up with the bi-weekly reading schedule. So let me announce that at an upcoming date. It won't be for several weeks, but if you would like to jump in and get started on what may be our next read, it would be Adam Christopher's Empire State. So I think that wraps it up, and I think you're probably pretty excited to jump into this first part of 2 with the wonderful Madqueen. So let's get to it. Here we go. Storypunks, as well as Madqueen's wonderful audience, we are joining forces today. So welcome to the live stream. We are talking about Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which inspired Blade Runner and tons of other stuff. It is technically probably considered proto-cyberpunk, but on my show, we talk about all the punks. So steampunk, diesel punk, cyberpunk, and all the other punks. And we're talking about the classics that really defined all of this. And then I also have Madqueen on the show. So let me introduce her to my audience, but I know that many of you are already well aware of Madqueen. So I'm going to do a quick bio, but Madqueen is found over on YouTube and many other platforms. And so if you have not yet connected with everything she's doing over there, you'll definitely want to. So yes, let me tell you again a little bit about Madqueen, and then we'll jump right in. Just be thinking of your questions about the book or your comments, and that's how we'll proceed. We'll do like a little bit of a panel discussion, but we definitely want to incorporate everything you're bringing there in the audience. So there you go. So Madqueen, is there anything else you'd like to add before I read this bio?
No, let's go for it.
Okay, great. Let me find the right, there we go. Okay, so this is in Madqueen's own words. I have a fine arts degree and a master's degree in animation. In real life, I work as an art director for advertising and consumer products. I collaborated with big brands like Disney, Warner, Mattel, or Hasbro, and I participated in projects such as Star Wars Episode 7, Avengers, Age of Ultron, and I was also a fashion and commercial photographer and art director, so just slightly qualified. I'm on YouTube because it gives me the chance to work with the IPs I love with total and absolute creative freedom. And I think that's such a cool thing about Madqueen. It really comes through in her videos and everything. And I know a lot of you already know this, but she continues, as this is something that only this media offers. So I'm also an avid reader of science fiction and a vegetarian. So again, welcome onto the show, Madqueen.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about things as though people have, read the book. So if you're worried about spoilers, or if you are a little worried about trigger warnings and stuff like that, then just know that there are trigger warnings for some sexual content, I would say. But I mean, I can't think of any. There's also violence, especially to the androids and stuff. But I think most people, this will probably be an okay discussion, but just be on guard about that if you've had experiences and if you are someone that needs to respond to trigger warnings. So just be aware of that. And also, so when I talked about contributing your questions, your comments, just know that Madqueen is going to choose someone for the best comment or the best question at the end of the show. And that person's going to get a free giveaway of a $25 Amazon gift card. Because everybody can think of something, right, on Amazon. So, yes, please jump in. Do not be shy. That's your incentive, to not be shy. And please join us on this. So, Madqueen, anything else?
Well, I wanted to say hello to this lovely people that is already here on my YouTube channel, because your opinion sucks. I just love the username. then sometimes I get confused and I think someone is insulting someone else. And
it's kind of genius.
Snatchy Claus says, Philip K. Dick, you got my attention. Yes, well, I hope we will keep your attention for quite a bit. Hello, Lucas. Hello, Andy. Oh, I read that book. Yes, you should. If you, when Cindy was saying about spoiler warnings, I was like, wait, is there anybody in the universe who didn't read this book already? Please.
I found some this weekend. I was talking about how I was listening to this on my, audiobook, and they were just like, "What is this? What's this book?" And I was pretty surprised. I read it a long time ago, but it was really fun to re-listen and check this out again. So yeah. And Madqueen, you listened to it, you read it. I'm so used to just thinking in audiobook terms, but you read this in Spanish as well as English, correct?
Yes, the last time that I read it is in Spanish, so I apologize in advance if some of the terms that I use are a direct translation from Spanish and are not the same in the English version, because I don't remember the English version that well.
Totally. I mean, I'm just always fascinated when people when people are bilingual, number one, but also when that can translate to coming to a text. Did you notice anything significant between the translations? Like, was there one that heads down was a better experience?
Well, usually translations in Spanish are known for being quite good and were faithful to the originals. In my whole life, I believe that the only books where I really saw a difference was in the Scroll trilogy. But I don't really know if this was a difference in translation, or that William Gibson is so thick sometimes that it was easier for me to read it in Spanish. I don't really know if it's one of them too. But yes, usually there is not much difference, because translations in Spanish are really good.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, awesome. I'm glad that you have that perspective, that you bring it to this. So I am seeing, if anybody is having trouble with anything in the feed, just let us know, just post a comment or anything, but I think we're ready to go. So let's just start with character, and we're going to talk about character, world building, theme, just kind of like the main trios of story, according to a lot of people and a lot of interpretations, but we can also go in any direction. So
world building is
just
a great
talking
way
about
to a great thing to start, because everybody expects 100% praise of Philip K. Dick, and the truth is that I honestly believe that when it comes to world building, he was always a step behind from, for instance, Ursula K. Le Guin, that was way more advanced in world building, most probably because she had deep knowledge on anthropology, because her father was an anthropologist, and she developed changes in societies that were directly provoked by technology, but there were really real changes compared to Ursula K. Le Guin. Then you read the books of Philip K. Dick, and in terms of world building, you can see that there are many differences with our society nowadays. You have a couple of technological things here and there, but not that much. Not that much.
now, okay, you might be better read with Le Guin's work, but does she write a lot of dystopian? Because I would consider this dystopian,
Yes.
definitely, but
But it's not
you
only
know,
the quality of dystopian, but about the speculation of the possibilities that were more integrated into this world. For instance, one thing that
yeah, yeah.
always I can't help but notice in speculative fiction is that, for instance, the models of family, they are always the same. And with family models, I don't mean different family models like queer families, because for me that's parents and offspring. That's the typical family model. I mean family model as the atom of society, the small example of society. So
The unit,
atom of
yeah.
society is family, and on Philip K. Dick, the family is exactly the same. He didn't speculate about ways of people to gather together that were different due to the circumstances. For instance,
And in
nowadays,
fact, like that first scene, I felt like she was like straight out of the 60s too. You know what I mean? Iran. I always say her name wrong. Erin, because I read it as Iran, but yeah. So, but yeah, it was, and so it wasn't only not speculating, but it was also just so similar to like historical. I mean, it was very traditional that way. And her character was really interesting to speculate, I mean, among ourselves about different roles for women and his books and stuff. But did I cut you off from something?
no, you go ahead, and when you're done, I can continue.
That's good. Yeah, because Erin, I mean, I felt like she didn't have any action of her own. And I think that was part of it. Like, I think that was purposely done. But I felt like, I read something on Twitter this past week where they were just talking about how if you can replace a woman character with a lamp, then it's probably not a well-developed character. Now, that doesn't mean he needed Aaron to be well-developed for his story, but I would question that. And I did question that. I was just like, she's the only human woman, main character that is in this book, but she's treated like, I mean, by the author, she's treated as not all that, she's not acting on her own. She's not, she's really just responding to her husband's life and stuff. And so I don't know if that was intended on Philip K. Dick's part to like send a message, or if it was just an afterthought, her character or whatever. But yeah, I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
Philip K. Dick is known for using way too much tropes of anything. I mean, this includes the female characters, because there's always this joke that the writers that have no idea how to make women characters, the only thing they do is describing their boobs, which is true, because Philip K. Dick describes the boobs of all the female characters on the Android stream. But in this particular point, when we talk about the wife of Deckard, I don't totally agree, because I believe that usually when a female character is used with this trope of just making the male character advance, doesn't have bending points by itself. It's not that she makes him notice something. Usually the trope is that she's suffering, and this suffering is what makes the male character, take decisions.
I see what you mean.
And actually, she had ideas of her own. For instance, having depressions, because that moment of having depressions, I don't believe that it's there just to move the character of Deckard forward, but to move the theme forward about discovering the bad side of empathy.
Yeah, and it was interesting how he got very it deconstructed. I thought that was actually pretty funny how he was talking about how if I order up a depression, that will then make it so that I can't, order up anything else. That whole thought process that he took us through was really interesting from the outset. And she definitely was making her order known to that machine, right? So she was choosing her own mood. But then in the end, I mean, didn't she take on his mood? You know what I mean? Her husband's mood, the one that he ordered up,
Well, because the whole excuse me, the whole book, it seems like she's trying to make him understand what empathy really is, which I believe is the subject of the book. And also, it totally amuses me that the great huge difference between the book and the film, because the film ends up like, oh my god, androids understood empathy, and the book finishes like, oh my god, humans understood empathy. And it's like the meaning is completely
Totally
different.
Totally different. And then well, do you want to talk about more of the differences between the book and the movie?
Well, there are many. I believe that every time that we let's continue with the world building, because there are a couple of things that
Okay.
I find very interesting. And
Go
for
for
instance, there was this world building into empathy thing. It is very, as the film tried excuse me, as the film tried to explain how androids regain empathy. It's a pity that they removed all the religion of Wilbur Mercer, which I believe was one of the most interesting things in the book. And it's quite interesting.
I did too.
That this is a religion that is a dogma. I am not sure if he was trying to make a parody of your average religion, where people have the dogma and they practice, but they don't believe in what they do, because it's actually what they are describing in the book. In the book, people follow the religion of Wilbur Mercer. They do all the things that they are requested to do. They have an animal. They use the empathy box. They talk about it. But at the time of the truth, they are not empathetic at all. We have this character, which name I don't remember, the one, Isidore? The one that lived alone.
Yes, Isidore. And he has two initials, but I'm sorry, I don't remember the initials.
And he's a special, and he's always afraid that how people will treat him. And actually not having empathy of knowing how to treat him proves that actually the Wilbur Mercer thing is just a dogma. And it's funny that how all this evolves to a point where the human empathizes with the androids. The upside down different to the film. And this way of seeing religion, I don't really know if again if he was trying to make a parody of Christian religion, and I say Christian because it's the one that was closer to him. But it was very, very interesting.
Yeah, I have a quote about that I'll just put on the screen, and I will read this for anyone who is joining us. Feel free to take a look at the screen if you want to read along, but let me read this. This is Mercer speaking to people in the book. I lifted you from the tomb world just now, and I will continue to lift you until you lose interest and want to quit. But you will have to stop searching for me, because I will never stop searching for you. And so I wanted to bring this up, just exactly what we're talking about here, whether this was supposed to be a type of a person. Certainly different figures come to mind, like Christ and other religious figures. But to talk about how this was something that at first I thought everybody was into Mercer in this book, but it turned out that not everybody was. And I thought that was interesting that people were into it to varying degrees and stuff. Anyway.
The messianic figure of Mercer, and one stupid detail, when I watched the trailer of the 2049 Blade Runner, the the sequel, there was a moment in the trailer where you could see a statue that was down, And for a reason that I don't understand, I thought that statue was Wilbur Mercer, and that in the sequel they were going to go to explore all the Wilbur Mercer religion. And I was like, yes, they're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
explain that. And no, it didn't happen.
They didn't go there. Yeah. It's so interesting, the different choices, and I want to emphasize, I absolutely love this book, actually. I say that because there are things that I wonder about the book, and things that I want to bring up. But when it comes to, I was really impressed with the world building. I know you said that it wasn't comparable to, Le Guin's, but I thought, I don't know, I thought for the time period, he did a really great job at inviting this movement that then came to be, cyberpunk. And I think it'd be really interesting to figure out his influence on Gibson, which I have not done. So I don't have that info, but have you ever come across anything like that?
Yes. Actually, it was very funny because William Gibson watched the film Blade Runner when he was writing The Neuromancer. And the
Okay, I knew
film
this.
described a landscape that the book didn't do. And he was more inspired by the film. Not exactly inspired by the film, because he was already writing something that was visually similar. But then he realized
he was
that...
worried it was taken.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
And then he realized that even if it was visually similar, in concept, it wasn't similar at all. Because one of the most important things, the most important theme in the cyberpunk movement is the interconnection, is the matrix. And there is no matrix in the new wave of science fiction. Because for me, both Philip K. Dick and Ursula K. Le Guin and James Ballard, for me, all of them are inside the new wave of science fiction. I cannot consider them cyberpunk, because cyberpunk is very, very centered in the transhumanism on the society once we are all connected, which is something that is not on Philip K. Dick. On a metaphysical level, maybe on values or something like that, when he started to take a lot of drugs and see God, and that's that late moment in the life of Philip K. Dick when he became very metaphysical. This can be some sort of seen like connection, but I think it was more religious. That's why I make a difference.
I totally see your point. Yeah. Oh, okay. I was just going to ask, but what about the interconnectivity of Mercerism, where they all connect and join a consciousness? But I see what you're saying. You're saying that the difference is that that's religious.
Yes, because it's an emotional connection. It's not a technological connection.
Yeah. Very cool. Awesome. Well, okay. Now we have several other quotes. Is there one you'd like to jump into next, or do you want me to just select one so we can hit all these?
I will follow you.
Okay. So I want to talk about this one where it's about fraud. So here we go. Oh, let me turn that one off. So here you go. I'll read this. So this is, okay, there we go. So owning and maintaining a fraud had a way of gradually demoralizing one. And this is in reference to having a false or electric sheep as opposed to a real one. But it also has other tones for the theme and stuff. And so, yeah, do you want to talk about why you selected that quote?
Well, yes, there is something that I joined this quote with almost at the end of the book, when Deckard finds Mercer, and Mercer tells him, "You're always going to be forced to make bad things, and maintaining a fraud is also a bad thing." So he feels forced to have an electric sheep, the same way he feels forced to kill androids. And at no point Mercer tells him that he has a choice. The way it's said, it sounds like, okay, there are gray areas of morality, and if you do the worst, it's not a bad thing. It doesn't enter into the judgments of what is good and what is bad, even though he is clearly saying that what he's doing is bad. There is something that I didn't totally like, because he was supposed to be in a road of discovering empathy, and by doing things that he considered to be incorrect, I don't believe that the arc going through empathy was coherent at all.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think I'll actually have to think about that more, because I can totally see what you mean. I mean, it's interesting, not to keep going back to the comparison between the movie and the book, but it is interesting that in the book, he seemed very motivated Deckard seemed very motivated by the sheep and by maintaining that status, or, it was about the sheep. It was about that very tertiary goal. And then in the movie, you have Harrison Ford, and he's like a hero, and they're just very different characters, like entirely different characters. So, and Harrison Ford is trying to overcome, the moral problem at hand. That's how I interpreted it. But so then I went back to the book and was like, that's really interesting that Deckard was just so completely motivated by the sheep. But did you think he was motivated by something else? Because he wasn't motivated by empathy. Even though you actually mentioned he was on a path towards understanding empathy. He seemed to want to understand it, But in the end, I don't think that he was ever really searching for that. I think it was all about empathy as a means to getting the sheep. I think he was all about that. But what do you think?
Well, I believe that all the whole sheep thing is an allegory of how people use religion to think about themselves. They are doing good without questioning what they are doing. And at any point, does he question if really having an electric sheep does make it different to have a sheep that is alive in terms of doing that for the religion? The only reason why he wants one that is alive is because it gives you more status, and that's it. So he really doesn't question about the true meaning of having a sheep. It's just he's just doing it for dogma. And the thing is that in the dogma of Wilbur Mercer, you need to have empathy towards those you consider your equals, not everybody. So people that you consider your equals and animals, people that you consider below you, these ones are like free, are exempt of empathy. And then while Deckard moves on and on in the plot of the book, at one point he feels pity for this man that he considers inferior to him because he's a special. And then later on, he feels empathy for the androids, who he also consider inferiors because they are not human. So it's more a journey, not because he's looking for it, but because he's finding it along the way.
Yeah. Okay, now on that point, I have a not fully fleshed out idea that I want to discuss. So it's possible that I'll come up with a different conclusion later. But as I was reading about his reaction to the androids, I was incited a little bit. I was like, as he worked out his thought process of what makes somebody human, it felt really, and I think it was supposed to feel, but I don't, I'll think about it more. But it felt really hollow to me because, Luba Luft, that android, she was valuable and she was human because she had a talent. And I was like, well, that's not really hitting the mark. I don't know that being talented, she was this great opera singer. I don't know that that makes you valid or valuable as a human. And then when he came up against Rachel Rosen, and he's trying to figure out how he feels about her. Ultimately, in that whole exchange, she was valuable because she was sexual. She was a sexual partner. And I don't especially like that as a definition for what makes somebody human or valuable to humans. And so that was something else for me to grapple with. But I wondered what you thought about those reactions to what, as he was trying to have empathy.
I believe that Rachel thought the same as you do because she ended up killing his animal.
Yeah,
but I believe that the book is not trying to say that there is a definition of what it is human being, but that there are many definitions of what it is human being, and all of them are valid. One way of being a human being is being the way that Deckard is, or a different way is as how the wife of Deckard is, that leaves the empathy on a different way, because the point in common of all the characters that are explored in that book is that each of them live the empathy on a different way. You have the special that lives the empathy in a way that he wants to help his new neighbor. So you see the different ways of seeing empathy, and that I believe that's the way that Philip K. Dick says this is the real definition of being human, and then it has a lot of interpretations, and all of them are valid as a human being.
I like that personally. I really, I think there's a lot of, it's interesting. As I was researching this book and, seeing what people thought of it and just, getting into it, what I saw over and over were people just saying some version of this book raises the important questions. And it was always about like, there's such important questions to think about in here. So many amazing questions raised in here. And it made me really think, well, yeah, were there a lot of answers in here? I don't know if it was intended as that. And it seems like a lot of people do read this and it's a book to make you think and stuff like that. So,
well, I must confess that there is something that pisses me off just a little bit. Is that Philip K. Dick became famous for the amount of film adaptations on his work, because everything science fiction is based on Philip K. Dick. There's adaptations that explored way more than Philip K. Dick did. For instance, I don't know, this one where Schwarzenegger goes to Mars. Total Recall. Total Recall is a very short story, and from this short story, they make an amazing story. Same with Minority Report. That's also a short story, and the film is 2 hours and a half. And what I mean with that is that sometimes Philip K. Dick is like the author that everybody knows, but it doesn't mean first that he's the best author, and second that not all the books that are famous for the films are the best. Because Blade Runner, well, the Do Androids Dream with Electric Sheep, is a film that was written in the mid to early stage of his career. He didn't learn yet a lot of things. I mean, he would become way more complex later. And it sometimes pisses me a little bit off that they describe the philosophy of Philip K. Dick in Blade Runner, well, in Do Androids Dream. Like, hello, he had a stage later on his life where he wrote Valleys and the trilogy of Valleys, and he just totally went crazy. This is 100% philosophy, and this is way more deep than Do Androids Dream with Electric Sheep. It's only that Blade Runner is famous. I honestly don't believe that Do Androids Dream with Electric Sheep is that deep. A lot of things can be extracted, but it's not pure philosophy, as some people say. They should read Valleys if they believe so.
That's an awesome recommendation. I have not read that, so I'm taking that.
Yes,
but also
take a coffee before.
Because it's going to swirl a little bit.
It's not an easy book.
Might fall asleep.
In fact, it reminded me a lot of it's not the same plot. I mean, not at all. But it reminded me a lot of Stanislav Lem's Solaris. Okay. And I thought these two should be friends. Too bad. I believe they both passed away. I think Lem passed away.
I know Philip K. Dick is deceased, but okay, so here's another quote that we have to get to. This touches a little bit on
before you go on, please allow me to answer some questions, because I'm forgetting the questions.
Oh, perfect. Let's pause.
Good afternoon, my queen. I just got here, so I have to ask, have you two discussed the brain in the jar theory, or the theory that our universe is nothing but ancestor simulation?
No, but we can.
We can. Yes, we will later. As Scanner Darkly was a strange one. Well, that's one of my favorite books of him. Minority Report is also from Philip K. Dick. Yes, a lot of science fiction works that you may not know are from Philip K. Dick, and usually based on really short stories that nobody knows. Philip K. Dick uses a lot of precogs on his work. Well, he developed that later when he became metaphysical. But yes, he liked the idea that humans would evolve to that stage.
Okay, Storypunks, you see what I mean? You see how amazing Madqueen is? I was so excited to speak with her, and I'm just as excited to share this second part with you in the next episode. So if you have to jump away and just join us back later, no problem, it'll be there waiting. I'm publishing it right after this one. And otherwise, just join us right now. That would be great as well. But in the meantime, if you need a little break, do you mind leaving a review over on iTunes or wherever you're watching this? That is so helpful. So if you could go to storypunks.world/review, if you've never left a review, I have instructions over there. Otherwise, just go for it. Please do leave a rating. You can always just, click the stars and leave a rating, but it's extra credit if you actually write a message, and it really helps people find the show. So that is awesome. And we've been doing really well. I'm so excited to see the numbers grow. We've doubled over our views in the last month. So thank you so much for however you're participating. And I really appreciate it. I really appreciate having you in the audience, having your energy here, and I'm sending it back to you for everything you're working on. Until episode 44, I hope you have a wonderful day.